Hello, this video is for IXL, Activity 8.V.6. It is titled Evaluate Multivariable Expressions. The three-character code for this activity is Quebec Zulu Tango. So how do we evaluate algebraic expressions? And I call them algebraic expressions because they are expressions that involve variables. So once we get variables, that is to say letters that represent numbers that can change, once we involve variables, then at that point we get over into algebra. So we call this an algebraic expression. So first we want to substitute these values for R and S, and then we want to simplify. That is to say, we want to actually multiply the numbers together or add or subtract or whatever the operation is in order to arrive at a final answer. So first we have the value of R, and I'm going to use parentheses to hold my variable values. The value of R is 4, and the value of S is 2. So this is 4 times 2, and that's 8. We know that's multiplication because there's no operation symbol there, so we recognize that as multiplication. So 4 times 2, that's 8. On the next one, evaluate the expression for W equals 7 and X equals 6. So let's go ahead and substitute our values. Well, first I'm just going to rewrite the problem. But wherever I see variables, I'm going to put in parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and put a parenthesis plus the other parenthesis, and now I'll substitute my values in. W has a value of 7, and X has a value of 6. 7 plus 6 is 13. Now most people would just say, okay, 7 plus 6 without the parentheses, and that's fine too on problems like this. However, we're going to get into some problems. As a matter of fact, the very next problem where parentheses really help us keep our organization together so that we do indeed arrive at the correct answer. The next one says evaluate the expression for U equals 7 and V equals -1. The fact that this 1 is negative is why it's important to use parentheses to hold our values. So let's go ahead and rewrite the expression using parentheses everywhere we see a variable, and then we'll substitute those values for that variable. So we have U times V. So let's put a parenthesis for U and a parenthesis for V. Put in our subtraction sign, and then put in the parenthesis for the other variable of V. The value of U is 7. The value of V is -1. The value of V again is -1. So order of operations says that we have to multiply before we can do any addition or subtraction. So we're going to have to deal with this 7 times -1. Well, 7's positive. The -1 is negative. Positive times a negative is a negative, and 7 times 1 is 7. So the product of 7 and 1 is -7. Now let's bring down our minus -1. And here's where I say that it's important to use the parentheses, because we want to keep the negative along with that 1. Next, I want to state that the addition and subtraction of negative numbers can get kind of tricky. Sometimes it's best to change the sign from subtraction to addition and then take the opposite of the number that follows. For instance, I'm going to take this -7, I'm going to change the subtraction to addition, and then I'm going to take the opposite of -1, which is +1. So now I can go ahead and add -7 to +1. Now, if you were on a number line, and we had a number line here, and at some point we have the value of -7, and we go 1 to the right by adding 1, we would land here at -6. So I know my answer is -6. But there's another way to do this. Whenever we're adding and subtracting, or actually, I'm sorry, whenever we're just adding numbers and one's negative and the other one's positive, what we want to do is we want to take the number that has the greatest absolute value and subtract from it the absolute value of the other number. In this case, 7 has a greater absolute value. So I'm going to take 7 and I'm going to subtract from it 1. 7 minus 1 is 6. So you see that the 6 matches up. However, 7 has a greater absolute value than 1. So I'm going to use the same sign that matches up with the 7, and that's a negative sign. So the answer is -6. On the next question, evaluate the expression for m equals -9 and n equals -1. So let's go ahead and put our parentheses in here. Just rewrite it with the parentheses. Keep you from going wrong on that. Now, m equals -9, n equals -1, and again, m equals -9. So order of operations states we have to do the multiplication first. So negative times negative is a positive. 9 times 1 is 9. So the product of -9 and -1 is +9. Let's bring down this minus -9. Now let's try that same strategy of we're going to take the 9. We're going to change the sign to addition. Now take the opposite of -9 and make it a +9. Now we have 9 plus 9, and that equals 18. So our answer is 18. Evaluate the expression for u equals 7 and v equals 6. Here's an exponent. So this is another place where we want to use parentheses. So let's just write our equation, our expression, using parentheses wherever we see a variable. And then we'll fill in the values of those variables. V equals 6, u equals 7, and again v equals 6. So order of operations, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We don't have any parentheses. Well, we do, but we're just using them to hold our numbers in place. Next step is to deal with exponents. And then we have an exponent here, 6 to the second power. This means 6 times 6, so that's going to be 36. Now let's bring down our -7 and -6. Let's see, how could we do this? Do I want to do plus a -7 or not? Let's just go ahead and do 36 minus 7. 36 minus 7 is going to be 29. Now let's bring down our minus. In this case, we don't have a negative inside with that 6. We can just simply bring down the 6. 29 minus 6 is 23. Our answer, 23. Evaluate the expression for h equals 0.3, j equals 11, and k equals 15.1. Well, once we get to decimals, we could do it by hand, but I'm going to suggest if you'd like, feel free to use a calculator. The idea here is to understand the process of substituting and then simplifying in order to evaluate the algebraic expression. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite all of these in parentheses. H, J, and K. Let's put in the value of H, 0.3. Let's put in the value of J, 11, and the value of K, 15.1. Now I might want to go ahead and move all of this to the side. I'll move all of this over here because I'm going to pull up a calculator, and we're just going to use the calculator and enter these values in here. So we just need to multiply all of these together. Now I could do 0.3 times 11, get the answer, and then enter 15.1. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and do it both ways. What do you mean both ways, Mr. T? You only said one way. Let's do it that way first. Let's do 03.11. So 0.3 times 11. And that's going to give me 3.3. So write down 3.3. And then I still need to multiply that times 15.1. So let's go ahead and bring the calculator back. Now let's do 3.3. It's already in there. So up here, you see this here. So if I just hit times, see how it brings the answer down? It says take the answer, multiply it times 15.1. My answer is going to be 49.83. So let's put this in there, 49.83. Now what if we would have just multiplied them all in the same line? Let's go ahead and do that. Grab the calculator again. Let's do 0.3 times 11 times 15.1. Hit enter, and you'll see we get the exact same answer of 49.83. Moving along to the next problem. Evaluate the expression for n equals -2 and p equals -7.5. So I'm going to write this using parentheses, put that square in there, times the value of p minus the value of p. Now let's plug in our values. N is -2, negative 2. P has a value of negative 7.5. And the other P still negative 7.5. Negative 7.5. I'll go ahead and do this one by hand this time. So order of operations says we first have to do exponents before we do the multiplication. So negative 2 squared is going to be negative 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Negative times negative is positive. So this is going to be negative 4. Now let's go ahead and bring down that. Oh, that's a negative 7.5. Negative 7.5 minus negative 7.5. Next, let's go ahead and multiply 4 times negative 7.5. I'm just going to write a 7.5 times 4, right? 4 times 5 is 20. Carry that 2. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 2 more is 30. I have one number after the decimal place, so let's move that decimal over one spot, and you'll see that that's going to give us a value of 30. Let's bring down our minus negative 7.5. Be sure to leave that parenthesis there. Now we're going to use that same strategy that we used earlier. We're going to go ahead and bring down the 30. Change the sign to addition. Take the opposite of negative 7.5, which is positive 7.5. Add those together. That would give us 37. Literally writing 30. 37.5 would be our answer. 37.5. Next question, evaluate the expression for Q equals negative 12.2, R equals negative 2, and S equals negative 10. So let's rewrite our problem using parentheses. Kind of see how the parentheses help us keep everything squared away. Don't want to forget that square there, just as I say squared away. How ironic. So let's plug in our values. Q is negative 12.2. R is negative 2. And S is negative 10. So first thing we need to do is square the negative 2. So let's go ahead and bring down our negative 12.2. Square the negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Remember, negative times negative is positive. Then we're going to put the minus our negative 10. Now let's go ahead and do negative 12.2 times 4. Well, 4 times 12 is 48, and 4 times 2 is 8, so I should have 48.8, and it's negative times positive, so this is going to be negative. Now, we're going to bring down our negative sign and make it positive. Take the opposite of negative 10 is positive 10, and then we have negative 48.8 plus 10 equals, well, I have a negative and I have a positive number. So which one has the greater absolute value? 48.8. And we're going to subtract from that 10. So I end up with 0.8, 8, and 3. So 38.8. However, which has the greater absolute value? Negative 48.8 has a greater absolute value than 10. So we're going to use the sign that is along with the 48.8, and that's going to be negative. So our answer is negative 38.8. Evaluate the expression for G equals negative 3 and H equals 5.5. And we already have a 0.9 in here. So let's go ahead and write our 0.9. We're just going to rewrite the whole thing. Wherever we have a variable, we're going to use parentheses, and for H. So let's put in the value of G, which is negative 3. Let's put in the value of H, which is 5.5. Order of operations says we have to deal with that exponent first. So let's go ahead and bring our 0.9 down and put a parenthesis here. We're going to square negative 3. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. Negative times negative is positive, so this can be positive 9. And we still have to multiply that times 5.5. Next, we need to multiply 0.9 times 9. Well, 9 times 9 is 81. But I do have one digit behind the decimal place there, so I'm going to need to move the decimal one place. So I get 8.1. I still need to multiply that times 5.5. And I could take a calculator to do that, but why not? Let's go ahead and do it by hand. 81.1 times 5.5. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 8 is 40. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 8 is 40. Bring down the 5. 0 plus 5 is 5. 4 plus 0 is 4. Bring down the 4. And now I have one number after the decimal place. One number at the decimal place. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I need to move the decimal over 2 places. So my answer is going to be 44.5. Now you could always check your work with a calculator. I encourage you to be able to do it by hand, but if you wish to use a calculator, that's all right. If you want, try it by hand and then use the calculator to check your work. Final problem, evaluate the expression for C equals -1, D equals -6, and F equals -1.1. So, wow, a lot of variables there. Let's put in one for C. Let's put in for D. We want to square that. Put in a parenthesis for F plus the value of C. Let's start substituting our values. C is -1, and it shows up in 2 places. D is -6, and F is -1.1. Order of operations, you guessed it, we got to take care of the exponent first. So let's go ahead and bring down our -1. Now let's take care of this exponent of 2 here. -6 times -6, well, 6 times 6 is 36. Negative times negative is positive, so this is going to be a positive 36. We bring down the times -1.1, and then plus -1. Now I think I'm going to pull up a calculator here for this portion here, for the first half. Everything before the plus sign, because this is all multiplication here. Actually, I think it's not too difficult, really. Look, if we take these two here, -1 times 1.1. Anything times 1 is equal to itself, and that's negative times negative, so that's going to equal a positive 1.1. Now let's bring down that 36 right here. Plug in that 36. Put our plus -1. Now 1.1 times 36. I might want to go ahead and work that off to the side. 36 times 1.1. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. And 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. 6, 9, 3. We have one number to the right of the decimal, so we need to move one place, and we end up with 39.6 by multiplying those together. Now let's bring down our plus -1, which, look, check this out. I can also change the addition to subtraction. Remember, I was changing subtraction to addition, so let's try something different. Let's go ahead and change the sign from addition to subtraction. Take the opposite of -1, and that's +1. Now 39.6 minus 1 is 38.6. And our answer is 38.6. So not as difficult as it appeared at first. So really didn't need a calculator for that one. All right. Well, that concludes all of my examples for IXL 8.V.6, evaluate multivariable expressions. Good luck with your activity.